We are live. Perfect. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is you managed to watch this back. Welcome to conversation 4 of shifting your mindset and growing into your potential. I'm going to introduce myself and then I'll let Amy introduce herself. So my name's Sally Eccleston. I'm a registered psychologist and yoga teacher. Founder of the Facebook group Wellness for Women, and I offer a range of practices and techniques to help women to restore their self-care and reclaim their power. And I'm here with Amy Bateman this morning. And would you like to introduce yourself, Amy, and your business as well?
Yes, sure, thank you. So my name's Amy. I'm the founder of a company called Face of Nature, which was launched probably at the beginning of this year, but I kind of spent the past kind of year and a half doing some training. But essentially, Face of Nature is a seasonal wellness brand for women. So it incorporates things like seasonal nutrition, lifestyle, rituals, skincare. It's a kind of holistic space really for women, surrounded just about wellness basically.
Yeah, and we all need a little bit more of that in our lives, don't we? Especially seasonal rituals. So just to say, if you are watching live in the group or if you're catching this on a replay, I always love to hear from you in the comments. I'm just making sure that I can see the comments as we go along. So if you watch it back, please do let us know, and I can come back to any questions or comments as we go along. You may be watching this on YouTube as well. Okay, so Amy, what I'd really love to start with is just a little chat about how you got to where you are now, how your kind of interest in self-care and seasonal beauty developed, and how you feel you've kind of landed where you are now.
Sure, yeah. So I would say that Face of Nature was really founded out of my own personal journey to wellness. So it kind of goes right back to, I've always kind of had problem periods. That's just been a constant throughout my life. But I guess this really was born out of kind of a traumatic pregnancy, basically. So with my second child, Albert, I had something called hyperemesis gravidarum, which is extreme nausea and vomiting in pregnancy. So I was really poorly for 5 months. It was a really, really hard time, so obviously having a little girl to look after as well. And it was, I had no idea what was going on to begin with because I didn't have this with Martha. So it was a really, really, really difficult time, which probably led to kind of prenatal depression and then postnatal depression afterwards, because it was just so debilitating. Albert's a bit older now, he's nearly 5. So when he was about 2 and things, gradually got easier as they do, you've not got the newborn kind of phase anymore. I was hoping to be a doula. I really wanted to help other women who were in the same situation as me, who were in that kind of, can be very isolating having a baby. And obviously now with lockdown and stuff for women especially. So I initially wanted to become a doula and help women in that postnatal period. But I also did some training with a lady called Louise Allen, who owns a company called Rhythm of Beauty. And I was going to kind of do both, kind of incorporate the treatments and the seasonal work within the kind of do the work. But when I did the training, it just kind of resonated with me and how I was kind of living at the time, and the whole ethos around it. I just fell in love with it. So that's where my focus kind of went. And the doula stuff, it's in the background at the moment, but nothing's really happening with that. So I just want to help other women to feel good and give them the tools and the guidance, so they can empower themselves around their health and well-being when it can be tricky time. So
And tell us a little bit about the kind of specific practices and tools that you found have made a real impact in your life.
Yeah, sure. So I think nutrition personally is a massive kind of deal for me. I really kind of make sure that my nutrition is always, as best as I can, kind of on point, and I'm always kind of nourishing my body and eating the right foods for me. You know, it is all kind of bio individual, but trying to eat kind of seasonally and kind of know that what works for me. So things like, I'm gluten free, I'm not celiac, I know gluten cause issue around period pain. I've really reduced my caffeine intake again, because that can cause quite bad period pain as well. So I think it's just knowing what works for you and finding what works for you. But nutrition is a really big part of my life. I spend a lot of time cooking, and making sure that I look after myself. If I don't, things really go off. So nutrition's a really, really big one for me. Other things, kind of self-care rituals, things like dry body brushing before a shower can be really, really helpful. That supports the lymphatic system. That can help with kind of getting rid of toxins out of the body, which help kind of the liver, which in turn can help with your, you know, periods and menstrual cycle. So I think just kind of making sure that there's time within each day that I can carve out for some form of self-care, whether that be a 15-minute walk after the school run. I find that really helps with my sleep. If I get that sunlight into my eyes kind of first thing in the morning, that can really support the circadian rhythm. So I think it's just making sure that there's time and I carve out time for myself, basically. Just making sure that there is elements of self-care within the day. It can be tricky, we're all busy, I understand that. But just kind of making that time for whatever it is that might work for you. So
yeah, and that's a real kind of mindset thing, as well as actually prioritizing the time, isn't it? Because I know, especially for women watching in my group, some of them will be parents and have young children and have, you know, time taken up in the day by school runs and bedtimes and things. I know you do as well. So let's talk a little bit about kind of your journey as a parent to creating this time, because I'm guessing it's not always straightforward or easy to prioritize, is it? So tell me a little bit about that journey and kind of how you've managed to prioritize that time.
Yeah, I think I mean, especially, you know, when you have kind of a newborn, that is absolutely exhausting, there's no doubt. And I think at that time it's almost a little bit of survival mode for me, from my personal experience. It really is kind of survival mode. If you know, manage a shower in a day, you probably achieve something massive, because the newborn thing is completely all encompassing. But my children are a bit older now. Martha's 8 and Albert's nearly 5, so it is a little bit easier. You know, each stage does come with its challenges, there's no doubt. And it doesn't necessarily get easier, it's just different, but it does allow for a little bit more time. So yeah, sorry, what was your question? I've gone off point.
Just the journey that you've been on. So any things that have been particularly challenging? Obviously sleep is a huge thing as a new parent or a parent with younger children, isn't it? So just about kind of any challenges you've faced in making that time, and kind of anything you've maybe found useful to overcome that over time as well.
I think the sleep thing was a massive problem for us. Albert has always been an absolutely kind of shocking sleeper. It's only just now, he's almost 5, that he's sleeping through the night, which, you know, just when I have that full night's sleep, the difference in how I feel is just unbelievable. But certain things that I do now to kind of support my sleep, so I love magnesium oil and I recommend it to the majority of my clients. So I love massaging. There's a product that I use called Sacred Oil, which is a combination of magnesium chloride, but also flower essences as well for the season. So that's really nice. At night time, a couple of minutes before bed, you spray that onto the soles of your feet, massage that into your feet, and it just helps to kind of support that restful sleep. But in terms of making time, I think it's really important. I actually diary things in, or I'd actually make it a part of the week and actually diary it in. It's so easy as a parent for things to just slip. You know, kids are number one and life is busy, and things can slip. So I try and diary something in, kind of ideally daily. You know, weekend when my husband's obviously at home. On a Sunday morning we have an infrared sauna, so that's my time to go into the infrared sauna, have 40 minutes, do some kind of breathing exercises or a meditation, and I've got that that time. So I think diarying it in is a great way to do it, because it just means that you've made that commitment to yourself. To have those kind of little practices, you know, if it's 15 minutes a day, if it's a walk after the school run, you know, off your phone, no sunglasses on, no matter what the weather, out you go, and it just kind of gives you that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think this is a really kind of useful point to make. It came up when I was talking to Rathika last week about the small rituals, you know, well, because when we're talking about kind of restoring self-care and restoring good health as women, as well as kind of managing any particular issues or, you know, whatever it is, a diagnosis that you may be managing, I think it's those small pockets of the day to begin, isn't it? So the things that you've already mentioned, like the 10 minutes after a school run, the 5 minutes before bed, you know, because with all good intentions, when you're starting off, the rest of the day can just kind of steam through. And it has to be intentional, doesn't it? I think like that is so important, and kind of having that sense of intention around it as well. I think the diarising, how often do you sort of diarise stuff then? You just do it on when you know you've got...
Yeah, I mean, I try, because I'm obviously quite busy at the moment, because I've set Face of Nature up, and, you know, kids and school, and, you know, cooking takes quite a bit of time. So I've actually tried to get organised with my time. I'm not the most organised person at all. Anyone that knows me will tell you that. So I think for me, kind of having a plan of my day, kind of chunking out bits of time where I might work on Face of Nature, or kind of life admin, or, you know, self-care, or that time for cooking, and just kind of chunk out that time. It doesn't always go to plan, you know, you do, you know, with kids things don't always go to plan, of course. So it's around kind of having that fluidity, and obviously, you know, if things don't go to plan, that's okay, but you've made that commitment in your diary to kind of just carve out 20 minutes, you know, 20 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, just something, so you can kind of come back to yourself and feel a little bit more balanced. So
yeah. And how did you manage that more when the children were younger? Was that definitely, you know, when you had them at home more?
Yeah, that is definitely
more of a challenge.
It is more of a challenge, definitely. And because you know, perhaps when Albie used to go down for his morning nap, that would be a time for me, whether it just be kind of getting outside and grounding for 10 minutes. You know, you do have less time when they're younger. I did personally, you know, it is kind of busier, and, you know, feeding every 2 hours and nappy changes and all that. So it definitely is more of a challenge. But, you know, if you can, again, if the little one goes down for a nap, maybe use that time, you know, once they're in bed of an evening, is there some time there where you can, you know, have a nice long hot salt bath, or, you know, whatever you can fit in, but be easy on yourself if it doesn't work well, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, not beating yourself up when things don't go exactly so.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about kind of how your passion for seasonal skincare came into this, because I'm a bit obsessed with skincare, or I have been recently. I've kind of tried different products and kind of rituals, and you know that I've just come back to using Tropics and joined as a Tropics ambassador. And I guess I've been on like a real journey with kind of skin myself, because, you know, however much we claim that it's not all about appearances, and, you know, you don't really care what you look like if you're super confident, like, definitely I think that's been a work in progress for me, because like now I will happily step out the door and go on a walk with no makeup, like, pretty much every day. But I didn't used to be that way. And, you know, I think it is true, like, you get more confident in your skin as you get older as well. But skincare definitely helps, doesn't it? And I think, like, knowing what you're putting on your body, because over half of stuff that you could just pick up from a high street store, it's very misleading as to actually what's in it, you know, synthetic materials, the chemicals. And I remember just after my 30th birthday, I'd been to Ibiza for a retreat, and I'd just come off hormonal contraception, and my skin was like horrendous, like loads of breakouts, like the worst that it had ever been. And I remember going to see a dermatologist in Manchester city centre, and they were linked with a specific DermaQuest, a specific brand.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, God, like, I know that this is full of chemicals and stuff to treat my skin. But at that time, you know, the dermatologist was saying to me, there might be a time in the future where you can return to products, you know, natural products that you want to be using. But I think for now we have to treat it. And so I did that for a while, and then kind of started using tropics and sort of probiotic skincare. And, you know, I mean, touch wood, thank God, like my skin is a lot clearer now. And yeah, I really love the kind of, you know, the ritual aspect of whether it's like applying a serum or a mask, or, you know, having a little routine. And also knowing that when I wake up, my skin will feel amazing.
Yeah, sure.
But what I don't know a lot about is the kind of, you know, the seasonal rituals. Obviously, you know, I know the only seasonal stuff that I would incorporate is obviously upping, you know, stuff like SPF in the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, like every day now, because some of the products that I use will increase the risk of damage to your skin from the sun. And then in winter, I know that my skin's more likely to get kind of like dry and dehydrated.
Yeah, yeah.
Your sort of interpretation and use of seasonal skincare is a lot different, isn't it? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think for me, again, going back to kind of the problem periods and problem hormones, so I really struggled with kind of cystic acne. This is when we were living in Australia about 10 years ago. And I remember having to use this cream that in the end, the doctor said, yeah, don't get it on your sheets because it'll bleach your bedding. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what is that? Just stripping the skin, completely stripping the skin. Gosh, looking back, thinking, my goodness me. But I think another thing to kind of talk about skin as well, it's kind of skincare as well from the inside out, because at that time, looking back, my diet wasn't what it is now. I think, was I drinking dairy then, or having small amounts of dairy, which for me personally is hugely inflammatory. So dairy had to go completely. So yeah, it's kind of looking at skin in a kind of holistic way, and not just using a product and hoping that the product will work. It's a kind of whole integrated kind of mind body approach about how we support our health, because our skin obviously can really show us if something is out of balance. So you know, if you're having kind of breakouts here, it's generally hormonal. If it's anything kind of on the jawline, it tends to be kind of the adrenals. You know, up here we're looking at the liver, dark circles, it's the kidneys. So I think it's about ensuring that it's a kind of mind-body integrated approach, rather than just thinking that a product is going to get rid of any issues that we've got. So the skincare that I use, so obviously the lady that I train with in Derbyshire, so Rhythm of Beauty, she creates all of the skincare herself. So she used to work for a company, a big skincare house, for about 10 years, traveling the world with this brand. But she left because they started putting parabens into the skincare, which didn't align with her kind of ethos whatsoever. So the skincare that I use is all organic, it's well crafted, it's handmade, it's absolutely beautiful. I should have brought some with me. Yeah, the skincare is just wonderful. And basically the base kind of products remain the same, but each season Louise will add in the flower essence of the season and also the essential oils according to the season as well. And obviously there's things that you can do throughout each season that will differ. Like for winter, your skin can get quite dehydrated. You're going from cold temperatures to warm temperatures. So you'd look at treating the skin and making sure it's really well hydrated. In spring, you could think about things like really kind of cleansing the skin, but also working on the meridian points that support the organs in power. So for example, now in spring, we've got the liver and the gallbladder, which are the two kind of organs that are at their kind of peak at the moment. And it's how you can support their function with skincare, with nutrition, with kind of rituals. Yeah, so I'd like to kind of look at it as a kind of holistic kind of approach to skin. I don't know if you have one of these, a gua sha.
I don't, you know. No.
Yeah. These, if you don't, you can just use a teaspoon. You don't have to have
Yeah.
like this. But these are really good as well for spring. Again, looking at rituals, lymphatic drainage is really important for spring. We want to try and support all the kind of the detox pathways. So lymphatic drainage is great. You can use your hands or a gua sha if nobody's got them, but if making sure that you are always kind of draining from here down and then out to the lymph is really important before you start and before you finish any facial massage. So it's a whole kind of holistic approach to skin, really.
100%. And so women who may be watching this, some women may be on a course with me. So at the moment I'm teaching a course which is kind of interlinking Chinese medicine with yin yoga and myofascial.
Right,
yeah. So there's so many different modalities to kind of interlink organ health and Chinese medicine, aren't there? I love it. I just want to kind of give a little bit of background for women or whoever watching. It may be a brand new concept. So in the UK, we have this kind of like Western medicine philosophy. So if you're going to see your GP, it's very symptom led and kind of led by like what you're presenting with at that time. So they're very unlikely, obviously they would understand your medical history in terms of conditions and things that were wrong with you, but it's much less of a holistic philosophy than in Eastern medicine, which is where the body and mind and emotions are understood as a whole. So when something falls out of balance, it manifests itself. And so, for example, you know, Chinese medicine is huge on the idea that when emotions aren't expressed or managed healthily, then that shows up physically. And so the other thing about Chinese medicine is that it understands that we have to have really good organ health. So not only, obviously we have the internal organs that have their kind of, you know, function, so the heartbeat and the lungs linked to the respiratory system and so on. But in Chinese medicine, they're understood as a much wider concept than that. So we have the organs linked to the seasons, linked to an emotion. And so if you were going to see an acupuncturist, for example, in the UK, then they would treat you on the basis of Chinese medicine, depending on their exact background and theory that they were using. So when we talk about things like meridians and organs, meridians are the kind of energy lines around the body that start and end at different points. So we have lots that start and end at the fingertips and at the feet. So these circulate kind of all around the body and they are linked to really good organ health as well. So as we kind of move through the seasons, and we can also look at different elements. So for example, last week I just taught the session on the course about kidneys and the element of water, and kidneys are kind of like the powerhouse, you know, the things that keep everything else working. So yeah, interestingly, I've just gone back to acupuncture and I was told that that water is, I'm a very kind of dominant water element person. So acupuncturists will work this out based on the tone of your voice and, you know, the your complexion and kind of how you're presenting. And it's like your whole person. It's not just you kind of sitting down in a chair and describing your symptoms. So I was told, like, you know, work on the kidney and the water element as your foundation, and then that will interlink. And I know kidneys are also really a powerful kind of organ to consider when it comes to menstrual health. You know, it's all about yin and being really balanced with our yin yang, and lots of busy women find themselves to be yin deficient for various reasons, but that the production of yin in our system, whether it's mainly kidney yin, is really, really needed for kind of good menstrual health and also fertility. So that was like a long-winded description.
Wow,
Yeah, but I'm really interested in it and kind of how the different organs, are linked to the energy channels and kind of interweave skincare into that. But the lymphatic drainage thing is a really interesting point, isn't it? Because I know, like, I teach some yoga postures that are really supportive of the limbs, like, you know, around the armpit area, if you use props to kind of have some gentle compression around this area. So could you just talk a little bit about, you know, why kind of considering the lymphatic system is helpful for us?
Yeah, well, I think it's a massive kind of support in terms of detox. And at the moment, with it being spring, and obviously, like you said, you know, according to the traditional Chinese medicine, the kind of two organs in power are the liver and the gallbladder. So really anything that you can do to support that, you know, it will be supportive, especially, and I found it helpful for my menstrual cycle as well. So I tend to use a dry body brush. I don't know if you one of you use that, but try again if I've got time, maybe not of a weekday, but do some kind of, you know, 2 or 3 minutes dry body brushing before I have a shower. So you'd always start at your ankles or your feet and work upwards in a circular motion, going right the way up towards the heart. So always up in the circular motion, you know, out towards the lymph and up towards the heart. So that's obviously really, really supportive, because I think in the kind of Western world, we can, you know, if we're sat at a desk, you know, we can become very stagnated. Our energies become very stagnated. You know, we go to work, we sit at a desk, we come home, we sit and eat dinner, we go sit down, watch TV, go to bed. So it's about keeping those energy channels kind of moving, keeping the energy moving throughout the system, and just encouraging flow. Again, with traditional Chinese medicine, kind of flow is so important to make sure that you're always kind of supporting that and things don't stagnate. So,
Yes, 100%. And sometimes even things that we think might be helpful, keeping energy flowing. You know, it's all about a balance, isn't it? Because I know, like, especially as we get into spring and when the sun is out and loads of people are going out on, you know, longer walks or hikes, and walking is a fantastic way to, you know, to connect to nature, to get our bodies moving. But sometimes what I find is that to keep my energy flowing after walks, in between walks, I have to do practices that actually require more stillness, and stillness helps that energy flow. So I think just kind of to point out that when we're talking about keeping things moving, it doesn't necessarily mean to be in constant movement. And actually, you know, practices where you might be in stillness for a few minutes actually do help movement in the system. And it's such a, I think you just have to be so in tune with your own kind of constitution and your own lifestyle as well, don't you? Because because we are spending a lot more time, it may be in situations which might stagnate our energy a lot more. You know, we're starting to be a bit more out and about, but I think just tuning in with, like, what is it that is actually going to serve me right now? Is it going to be sitting down more, or is it going to be a walk, or is it going to be a stretch, or is it going to be, you know, like making a bit more time before bedtime for a skincare ritual, or whatever it is? I think that's so important, because I think, you know, it's so easy to sort of fall into habits, isn't it? You know, especially around like food choices, and I mean, I still have, just because I know you mentioned dairy and gluten and things like that. I think we do have so much choice now when it comes to what we put in and on our body. And sometimes it can get overwhelming. Sometimes it's hard to figure out what's right for you.
Right. Yeah.
And so sometimes you kind of have to figure it out over time, don't you? So I still have like bits of dairy, but I don't have dairy milk as a rule. I mean, even like, you know, the tiny corner shop down the road from me is now selling, you know, like oat, almond and soy milk, which is amazing. So that's quite an easy swap to make, isn't it, for lots of people now. But yeah, I love this idea of just making conscious choices about what goes in and on your body, rather than just kind of falling into, well, this is the way that, you know, we've always done it in this house, or like, I'm not sure if I could do it that way because my husband might not like it. Because I know you've got your 2 children and you're married, and so it does require a kind of certain element of support in the household, doesn't it? To be the way that you are.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, my husband, because I've also been working with a kind of functional nutritionist. Again, so after having Albert, I was so depleted, obviously, because I spent 5 months unable to eat or drink and was, you know, vomiting quite severely. My body was just so depleted. And my periods were absolutely horrendous. I would spend probably 2 weeks out of every month crying on and on. My body, I was just completely depleted. So I've worked with a functional practitioner. She's actually based in Sydney. And again, it's all around kind of that bio-individuality. What might work for me might not work for you, and it's about understanding that what works for one doesn't always work for somebody else, and it's about kind of trial and error and trying different things and finding things that fit with you. But I'm, you know, my husband is very kind of supportive in terms of, you know, if we've made any kind of dietary changes, you know, he'll do the same and come along with me, so we can just cook one meal instead of 2 or 3 different meals. You know, the kids eat pretty much anything. They're good eaters, thankfully. So it's, you know, 1 pot meal in our house. To try not to cook different, you know, we all have the same meal because of it's easier, and they are good eaters, so that's fine. But yeah, having that support, it can be difficult, and you can feel quite isolated if you don't have that kind of support around you when you're making those changes. But again, work with a practitioner, you know, work with someone like yourself, or work with someone like me, or a functional nutritionist, if you can, to just have that kind of support along the way, because it can feel quite challenging and quite isolating.
100%. And sometimes those are quite challenging conversations to have at home, aren't they? I mean, I'm just thinking of especially women in my group who might be on a bit of a journey themselves, but it does involve kind of taking other people with you to a certain extent, doesn't it? Whether it's, you know, whether it's family members, or whether it's children, or whether it's a partner, and it's kind of it kind of requires open-mindedness, not only from you but from them. And that can be, I think it's just important to sort of understand that they might not come on that whole journey with you, but I guess just sometimes that conversation around any changes that you want to make, or any time that you want to make, or whatever it is, that can be more challenging than actually doing the change itself, can't it?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, you know, as women, obviously we're such cyclical beings with ebbs and flows in our own kind of natural cycles, that I think for men it can be quite different. You know, but fortunately for me, and my husband is, you know, super understanding, so it's never been an issue. And I guess there's always been a kind of focus around health. I think he's, you know, since we've met, I've always kind of had an interest and a natural kind of passion around kind of health and well-being anyway, so it was never a huge surprise for him if I had to make certain changes. So
so what do you remember as being kind of one of the first things that maybe you either changed, or you kind of maybe you found really challenging and had to overcome that, you know, way back when?
I think to begin with, so when I saw the kind of functional nutritionist, it was a very kind of clean diet for the first 3 months. She wanted to just go on a very, very clean diet. So no dairy, which was fine because I don't drink or eat dairy, so that wasn't a problem. But no caffeine, no sugar, no gluten, which can sound to some people absolutely kind of overwhelmingly kind of scary. So I guess initially those kind of 3 months where, you know, no alcohol as well for the first 3 months, it was really about just kind of cleaning everything up. But I felt fantastic. I felt amazing. It was hard, but in terms of how I felt great. And obviously it's about just reintroducing those foods kind of bit by bit. You know, I might have the very odd drink, maybe a small glass of organic red wine, maybe once or twice a week, because I know alcohol doesn't agree with me. So I feel so much worse the day after maybe 1 or 2 glasses that I think there's no point. And it's making those switches. So for example, I've cut down on caffeine, so I'll allow myself 1 cup of tea in the morning. Still love a Yorkshire tea with soy milk. But then in terms of a coffee, I would then have a coffee in the morning. I've gone to an organic decaf. So, and it's just making those kind of switches. I'm still getting that kind of bitter taste, but I'm not got the effects of the caffeine. Yeah. And things like if you go for decaf coffee, always try and make sure it's organic, and it's the Swiss water method that they use to decaffeinate it, because if it isn't that, they use solvents to decaffeinate the coffee. So you don't, ideally you don't.
Yeah, I found out about this recently. My acupuncturist, I was talking to her about coffee, because I believe out of your book, I've kind of gone back to, I just find it too tempting if my partner's made a cafetiere.
The smell of coffee.
Like, coffee. Yeah, I was even looking at coffee machines the other day. But no, I could really do with swapping to a water base. She said to me, make sure if you go for a decaf one, it's decaf. So what's that? I'm actually going to write this down for myself.
Yeah, sure. So try and choose organic if you can, because coffee is those heavily sprayed kind of products that there are. So try and choose organic if you can, but it's called the Swiss water method. So I don't know how they use water. I don't know how they do it precisely, but basically just look out for that, because otherwise they use solvents to decaffeinate it. So always look out for the Swiss water method. I know there's a brand locally called, is it Peak Bean or Peaky Bean? Their decaf is a Swiss water method.
My eye out.
And I've got one in the kitchen. I can't remember the name of it, but I can share it with you, which is lovely. Really like caramelly notes and stuff. But again, it's a Swiss water method. And it's
nice. You'll have to tell me which one that is. And I'll buy it for sure. Thank you.
Just making those kind of changes, you know, can feel quite overwhelming, but there are so many alternatives out there, you know. There's lots of alternatives out there, and I think it's just knowing what to look for. It can feel quite daunting for sure. So just make small changes. You know, it doesn't have to be whole hog everything, just small incremental changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I'm following an Ayurvedic kind of program at the moment, and I remember, I think I've been doing that for about 2 to 3 months now, but I have slipped a little bit recently. But I remember when I had the initial consultation, and it's just the changes that kind of I felt were going to be more reasonable. So, you know, like every morning, not having a smoothie, not having coffee where possible, making something that's quite like whole grain based with rice and like lots of spices and things like that. And just having a lot more like whole cooked food rather than raw food, or like not so many kind of tropical fruits and stuff, and not so much dairy. So just a lot of dals and things like that, curries and stews, which is, I was finding it okay when it was a bit colder, but I think, you know, as it gets warmer, definitely will struggle a little bit more. But I think because I know other women in the group are on their own path with nutrition and kind of just finding what works for them, and, you know, kind of watching their habits with like just habits with eating overall, you know, times, quantity, whatever it is, you know, junk food, binge eating. And we all have that, don't we? We all have the particular cravings that can hit us, and kind of like eating what the kids are eating and that kind of thing. But it is just observing like the overall, because I think sometimes when you feel really down in the dumps, it's easy to forget like what might have contributed to that. You know, so whether it's like alcohol in your system, or whether it's what you've eaten, and it's not about kind of like eradicating everything, is it?
No, absolutely
Aware of how things affect you.
Yeah.
Because I just know, like, you know, I mean, like you, I'll have some kind of decent quality wine now and again.
Yeah.
But I just know that in the evenings, I can find it massively dehydrating.
Yeah.
It's not worth it for how I wake up feeling, you know, and for how much I kind of want to try and get going, or how much I want to kind of get through the next day. Yeah, it's just not worth it. So I think it's just being aware of like what you're sensitive to and what you can tolerate, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And trying not to think about, you know, oh, I can't have this, I can't have that, I can't have the other. You know, think about all the things that you can have. And when you are thinking about what it is that you're cooking or eating, or something that you're grabbing on the go, you know, is this going to nourish me? Is this going to fuel my body, you know, or is it just kind of heavily processed? Yeah, I feel good for 5 minutes and then I'm going to have a blood sugar crash. You know, try and think about, kind of open it up and think about what you can have as opposed to what you can't have. Because as soon as you say you can't or you're not to have something, it almost appears at the forefront of your mind as the only thing you can think about. So it's kind of making that kind of mindset shift, I think, to kind of then, you know, have a few more kind of positive habits around it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of the time with kind of choices that we make around, you know, like things that we might end up feeling guilty about later on, or we end up being so much in a rush about them as well. Like my acupuncturist was, again, going back to coffee, she was saying, you know, if you are going to have like one coffee a week or one coffee a day or whatever, like she was quoting someone else, I can't remember who it was, but just about creating the ritual of it, you know. And if we think about stuff that we have that we see as like naughty or bad for us, so much of the time we have it in a rush, and we kind of, you know, we don't create that sense of, okay, if I'm going to choose to have this, I'm going to choose to sit down and actually enjoy it and not feel bad about it, and then, you know, and then tomorrow I might make a different choice or whatever it is. I think we're in this kind of like you know, quick fix, or just people want stuff done so quickly, whether eating or on the go, or like service, you know, stuff done for you and all of that. And actually, like the ritual of sitting down and cooking something, and or sitting down and enjoying something, and obviously we can't do that like 24/7, can we? I definitely have periods where I just want to grab stuff on the go, or you know, but it's just that level, it's the awareness around that, isn't it? All the time.
It is, yeah. And I try and have the real kind of the 80-20 kind of rule for me personally. So, you know, 80% of the time, you know, I'm eating really well, you know, lots of home cooked foods, my breakfasts are good, trying, you know, with breakfast, try and balance my blood sugars, because again, that's really important for hormonal health. But, you know, I might have the odd takeaway, I might have the odd glass of wine, I love dark chocolate. So, you know, it's that 80-20 rule. I think you can be good kind of 80% of the time. You know, you will have those treats and things that you like, absolutely. So
yeah, 100%. Okay, so if you were talking to someone who was really struggling right now, I'm just going to double check because I could see that someone was watching. Oh, Rosie's just said she's a Tropics ambassador too. Okay, I can see some people have been watching this live. Hello, everyone. If you were talking to someone who was really struggling, maybe pandemic related, maybe not, what would be your kind of top 3 tips or top 3 pieces of advice to support well-being right now?
Yeah, okay. So I think nature connection for me personally, and I think everybody benefits hugely from having that kind of nature connection. So getting away from your screen, don't take your phone, and just get out into nature. For me personally, that's a massive kind of help. I kind of de-stress. I can think more clearly. I gain a lot of clarity around things. Seeing what's happening in nature, you know, you can see kind of the green shoots and stuff coming up at the moment. There's new life. So nature for me is a massive for us as a family. So getting out into nature, it's free, you know, get out, go for a walk, find somewhere that you love going to, and just have that time in nature is massive. And another thing I think for me as well, I switched the news off last March and I've never watched it since. It can be so fear-based, continuous kind of messaging constantly. In terms of mental health, after everything that's happened over the past 12 months, you know, some people might not agree, but for us personally, I thought, no, I can't. This is just bombardment of kind of fear-based information. Was not conducive to anybody's health in this house whatsoever. So we made a conscious choice that pretty much the TV went off as of last March. Very kind of fear-based and causing quite a bit of anxiety, in all fairness. Wasn't serving us in any way. So I think for us, turning kind of the media off, or having some break from your screen, break from your phone, break from social media, you know, maybe on a Sunday, make it a screen-free day. Turn your phone off and have that break. Because again, it's so all-consuming, isn't it? It's, you know, you can find yourself mindfully kind of mindlessly kind of, you know, trawling through Instagram and Facebook. And what else in terms of mental health?
To be fair, that's pretty much 3, because you've covered kind of the news and sort of screen time, social media time as 2 separate things. They are different, aren't they? You know, kind of your consumption of the news. Those are different ways that you can consume the news. You know, whether it's like radio, TV, whatever, and social media use. And I think that those are really, really useful things, definitely, and things that you can always use as a bit of a reset as well. So I was having weekends off social media, and I don't have the apps on my home, like the icons on my home screen. I have to go into the app store. Then I was finding that I was like still doing that. I mean, hands up, like social media addict, like 100%. I will finish that. So I'm about to go back to kind of being really strict around social media weekends, and actually just switching off my phone. And I'm going to go back to kind of evenings as well. So like definitely after 9 p.m, potentially after 8 p.m. Not replying to messages, like no social media use. And because it's just very easy, isn't it, to fall into the scroll, to kind of get consumed. And it's absolutely fine to be well informed and into what's going on, like if you want to be. But again, it's just like, I think it's so useful to say that level of awareness around how that's affecting you. And again, is it just a habit, or is it something that's actually helping you and nurturing you and, you know, helping you to feel connected to the world? We all know about the pros and the dangers of social media, don't we? Social media land.
100%. And just being mindful of what you consume, and obviously not just kind of food, but what you consume in terms of what you're seeing on social media and things like that. Definitely.
100%.
Awareness.
So I'm going to post in the comments, both on the YouTube link and in the video in my group. I think you've posted your website. I'll post that again. I'll post where people can find you and connect with you. And Amy and I are hoping to collaborate more, aren't we? Which is exciting. So Amy's not very far from me. She's in Glossop. So so if you're in the area, stay tuned for potentially autumn. We're just kind of seeing how things go for the time being. But in-person events in the Glossop area, stay tuned for that. Is there anything else you want to mention, Amy, about kind of either anything you've got coming up or your service? people
Yeah,
can work
sure.
with you?
So at the moment, so obviously the books are open for the spring seasonal alignment, so the spring one-to-one. So obviously that's an online service at the moment. But yeah, the books are open for spring, you know, so if you feel kind of the call, you feel you need some further support around how you can support yourself, you know, through nutrition or through rituals, through skincare, then the diary's open now for those spring one-to-ones. And again, yeah, any questions, if anyone has any questions, you know, don't feel the pressure to book in with, just send me some questions or comments or whatever it is. I'll obviously try and help as much as I can. So.
Yeah, 100%. So either just tag Amy or tag me, or you can get Amy through her website or through Instagram.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. No problem.
For coming in. Yeah, it's been so lovely to talk.
Yeah, thank you.
See you soon.
Thanks, Sally. Yeah. All right, cheers. Take care. Bye.
Bye.